Okay. Shoot or shoot.
Rollo's out.
Rolo is not in this. He wants no part of it.
I was gonna count down, sorry.
3, 2, 1, go.
You realize you just turned this
No,
conversation into some
I
CrossFit
know.
stuff.
it's not CrossFit, it's straight and heroic. But
But it just 3, 2, 1 wrote our conversation.
so we don't go over. Cause you talk a lot.
Girl, stop. Stop.
Alright.
I'm trying to make sure people get this quality information. That's all I'm trying to do here.
Okay.
Okay. Well, hello there.
Hi, I'm Janie.
And I'm Dan. And we are here today to talk about exposure. One of the pillars or tenets, depending on how you look at it, principles, if you will, of actually optimizing your health.
Mhm.
What do you think, Jamie?
No, I agree, but I think we should specify what you mean
What
by
we're talking
exposure.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
exposure to
What comes to mind to you when we say exposure?
Exposure to the elements, exposure to sun, exposing yourself to nature. But the more I say it, I'm more just like being naked outside.
That's
is what I
where my
think
mind
about.
was going. Yeah, that's where my mind was going. Like, so we're telling people
Which-
to get naked? No, we're not.
But I've been hiking, and one of my dear friends loves to get naked when we hike, and it brings her much joy. So there might be something said about that.
There.
Yeah.
I mean, that is our natural state, if you will. That's how we used to roam this earth,
Right.
butt ass naked. Yeah. So I think this merits we have to talk about this because I feel like it's an easy aspect to overlook
Right.
when it comes to optimizing health.
And I think it's because most of us, unfortunately, are stuck in a 9 to 5, and so
and city bound, like concrete
Living in
jungle
cities.
type of
Yeah.
living. Yeah.
Yeah.
Modern lifestyle too. There's a whole bunch of shite that distracts us and keeps us indoors for
Right.
longer than we should be indoors.
And over the past couple years, when we were encouraged to stay indoors, and that became a normal,
Yeah.
and now coming back out almost, at least I appreciated that. I was like, wait, what? I can go out and do things again?
Yeah.
And so,
I think there's something to be said about that because
Right.
I think even people that were more outsea bound,
right.
that's a word, outsea, you can look that up. But it now they've reverted into this habitual thing of staying home, and I'll put ourselves in that category.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with all the stuff that we have, the phones, the televisions with endless amounts of shit to watch on computers, jobs that are mostly indoors and desk bound, 9 to 5, and artificial lighting. And even if you're somebody who has some sort of health consciousness where eating and movement, I feel like people can find that easier because that's where their mind goes to when they think about health, is like working out and eating better. I think that's very well known, but people forget about things like this where it's like, hey, you actually got to get outside,
Right.
and breathe some fresh air, if you will, because that's why
Right.
they say it is something important.
And so I know from a mental health aspect, being outside in nature has proven to have its benefits. I read somewhere, I didn't write down the research, but they quantified how many hours a week you needed to be outdoors to reap the benefits from it. And it's 2 hours. Either, it just makes me laugh that they came up with a very concrete answer.
Yeah, 2 hours.
But it takes, you can do it all in one or spread out over time during the week. And so I think that the fact that they're doing studies on how you need to be outside is showing the benefits of it, but it's also sad that we need to find the least effective dose for people to be outside to reap the benefits, because we're just not outside that much.
The minimum effective
Yeah.
dose. Yeah. So this is something that comes to mind too with, like, when I tell people to walk as a form of exercise or cardio or whatever, be like, hey, we're just starting out, we need to go on walks. I usually recommend walking outside before I tell them to go walk on a treadmill.
Right.
Because I think that's more of the same. Obviously, if you're at work, you're in a cubicle or whatever, most of the people are, most jobs are indoors unless you're blue collar or farmer or whatever type of worker. So most jobs are indoors. You're in that artificial lighting all day,
Looking at
looking at screens and that artificial environment too, like climate controlled, like us, at a perfect 60 or 70 degrees. And so you're comfy in there.
Most offices are way too cold.
So, yeah, but you're not hot,
Right.
and if you're cold, you put a jacket on.
Right.
And then you walk out of that into your car, so you're exposed to the outdoors for like a minute.
Right.
If you park, a little far from the door. And then you get in your car, climate controlled there as well, with all sorts of electronics bombarding you. Maybe you're on your phone while you're driving, and we know you are, okay? You shouldn't be, but we know you are. So you're doing whatever. And then let's say you go to the gym, then you go into another climate controlled, fake lighting type of environment, unless you work out outdoors, like you're a runner or something, which that's where they would have a benefit.
Right.
And then you get back in your car, you come home, so you miss out. You don't really get it anywhere on time spent out in the sun or breathing like fresh air, or exposing yourself to a higher or lower temperature, because there's benefits to that as well.
Right.
When we talk about exposing yourself to heat and cold, and this is where saunas and things like that,
ice baths.
and ice baths come in,
Cold
and that's
showers.
something that cold showers that we will discuss at a later time, but there's benefits there.
Right.
And we're kind of replicating what you would have in nature if you walked outside in the middle of a Florida summer or Texas summer. Doggone it, that's hot. Or if you walked outside in
upstate New York
winter. Exactly. But there's benefits to that exposure as well. Let's talk about the stuff we get from the outside, why we see it as something so important. So let's start with the concrete stuff, like that people like, hey, no shit, this is the scientific benefit of being outside, and then we can go into more observational stuff, I would say.
Vitamin D.
Oh, for sure. The
From
king,
the sun.
the king dingaling vitamin D. Oh, you saw what I did there? It's king dingaling. It's the
Oh
D.
my God.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
You don't like my jokes?
I love them.
That's a fact. Anyway.
So vitamin D unarguably has a ton of health benefits. From immune function, absorption of calcium to promote bone density.
Yeah.
Prevention of osteoporosis or improvement of weakened bone density.
Let's harp on that for a second, because I think everybody knows that calcium, relates to bone density. There's also other things that calcium regulates, like muscle contractions, which people don't, when you're going to contract the muscle. So here we're talking about working out or muscle function. If you're low in calcium.
Also, your heart is a muscle and it contracts.
Exactly. So now we're
very
talking,
life-sustaining.
calcium regulates muscle contraction, so that's important. But it tends to be conventional wisdom that calcium helps create strong bones. But the missing link there is that for your body to utilize that calcium, you need
vitamin D.
Boom. Okay,
which is not readily found in food. You can buy things that are fortified with vitamin D, but most of that stuff isn't going to be beneficial to you otherwise.
So there's an issue with bioavailability there.
Right. So like orange juice is fortified with vitamin D. Some cereals can be fortified with it. Some milks.
We're not going to get behind cereals.
So we don't.
But some milks are fortified with vitamin D. We talk about vitamin D supplementation, which we really believe that probably that should be something that most medical facilities, insurers should probably cover when they, when you show up, be like, hey, we need to put you on a vitamin D thing, but they don't.
Well, I think the issue more is that most insurances won't cover testing for it unless you have a diagnosis of osteoporosis or some other related vitamin D disorder, which I won't go into. But I personally have had a hard time getting insurance to cover screening vitamin D for, say, somebody our age. Which I think it's important to know what your vitamin D level is, because if you're going to be supplementing it, you need to have the level checked, because there is too low, then there's also too high. And there's a subset of people who increased vitamin D can increase calcium absorption and cause things like kidney stones. So we need to be aware of that as well. So yes, we're promoting you consider vitamin D supplementation, but I strongly promote you to please have it checked or talk to your trusted healthcare professional about that and don't just go mindlessly pick something off the counter and start taking it.
There you go. That's your disclaimer on that.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about what is happening in the population. Like, what are the chances of somebody showing up with above average or too high vitamin D levels?
I personally have not seen it.
Exactly.
I've heard about it,
Yeah.
but I have not seen
I've
it.
heard one person in my entire life, which is a coworker of mine, say that she at some point was told to stop taking her vitamin D supplement because she was too high. The spectrum of it. Tell him, Roland. Tell him. Tell him. Yep.
He feels very strongly about this.
He feels very strongly about vitamin D. He's mad at you right now because you're not taking vitamin D. That's what's happening here. So,
He's done.
Okay, thank you, Roland. Thank you for that interjection. Good point. Solid points on vitamin D. So, she had told me, I don't think that makes sense. She said that she was told to stop taking vitamin D supplements because it was too high at one point. So, the ranges for vitamin D are...
Oh God, you're going to put me on the spot.
30 to 90. Right?
I was going to say 30 to 100.
Yeah, 100 would be really good. And then if you bust 100, then it's too high.
Yeah.
But think about that range too.
It's a big range.
Jesus, that is super big.
It's not that big.
30 to 90?
Well, it makes sense. You think something's bigger than it is. That's fine. Well, you don't like my jokes? I'm sorry. Oh my God, I'm sorry.
Yo.
You like just walked that over to me and we're like, here.
Whatever.
No, but it is a pretty broad range. I would say most people fall in the 20s that I've seen.
So we say 30 is the beginning of
30s
of normal.
low is start of normal.
Okay.
And so if it's below, there's a difference between insufficiency and deficiency. But even if I find somebody in the 30s or 40s, I still tell them to take a low dose vitamin D supplement or to increase their exposure to the sun. And that's going to be different for everybody because if we go by sun as a way to get your vitamin D, which that is really the best way to get it, that's going to be different, like I said, for everybody. So we'll take example of Dan and I. I could sit out in the sun for 5 minutes and I will get more vitamin D than if he sits out in the sun for 5 minutes because he has more skin pigmentation than I do. And so he would need to spend more time out in the sun, so it makes sense that he would probably need more supplementation than me if we were both using
and obviously as it relates, the science and the history behind that is, darker skinned people tend to be closer to the equator, so
right.
we historically more exposed to the sun, and melanin is actually protective from the sun. That's why it takes longer for darker skinned people to absorb that vitamin D, because it's almost like a layer of protection from the sun that you have to get past until you're getting into the significant amounts of vitamin D. Lighter skinned people, you guys are quick charge. Sit out there, boom, you got the vitamin D you need, you're gone. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now there's also to consider light eyes is another one. Yeah. And here's the thing, when you expose yourself to the sun, you have to be like wearing sunglasses blunts that process. You gotta expose your eyes as well. That's very important. It has to come in through your eyes, it has to come in through your skin. Mm-hmm. Another thing that kind of...
Well, I think we should also say that everything, and I say this to my patients a lot, everything is an annoying balance. And so yes, getting sun exposure through your eyes, but as me, myself, I have light eyes, if I get too much sun through my eyes, mm-hmm. there is an effect of it. It can damage. And so I have to be cautious of what time of the day I'm not wearing sunglasses and how much time I'm spending not wearing sunglasses. Yep. So again, disclaimer, if you want to take this practice of trying to get more vitamin D through the sun, please talk to somebody about it to figure out what's your baseline regarding your health to receive that sun, yep. If that makes sense.
And I think like everything, if you came to me for a workout and you've never worked out, we're not going to start doing sets of 20 reps and stuff like that. If you're like, hey, just do 5 and do 2 days a week, and then you can slowly increase. I think sun exposure, you probably have to periodize it in the same way, where it's like if you're fairly light skinned, 5 minutes, once or twice a week, and then little by little you increase your tolerance to it. There's another caveat there that we won't discuss today, which has to do with diet and what you're eating and how the sun actually affects you. Okay, so we'll leave that one for another day, because that's a huge rabbit hole that we can get into, a whole bunch of stuff with food supply and ingredients in food and how that reflects on your skin when you're exposed to the sun.
Right.
Also beauty products and all sorts of stuff like that might affect your skin when you're exposed to the sun in very negative ways. I think if we talk bioavailability, this is why you want the supplement and you also want the sunlight. Now, what about our peeps that are not fortunate enough to live in a really sunny place where the sun's widely available? Talking northwestern United States, we're talking, up north right now where it's freaking dark and gloomy.
Well, I would say you and I both lived in upstate New York for a few years, right? And there is
Rolo, it's okay. It's okay. I promise you that he's very friendly, and it's bold. If I open that door, he is gonna go lick and ask for pets, whoever is outside. And while he's in here, he's acting like he's tough. But he's not.
So when you're living in upstate New York, everyone's like, oh, it's so cold. And it's not the cold so much that's bothersome. It's the gray, right? So the sun just does not like to appear very often during the months of,
I'd say mid-October, once the daylight savings or whatever changes over.
Right.
It gets
like
weird.
February.
Yeah, even more in March. Yeah, it gets weird.
And, SAD is a real thing, seasonal affective disorder, and definitely correlates to exposure to sun.
Yeah, observationally speaking, I always tell people when they ask me about living up there that the general mood of people, there was a shift whenever that happens, because literally once you switch over the clock, if I'm going to work at 6 a.m. it's dark, and if I come home at 6 p.m. it's dark. So I could sense, in the gym, people start showing up less. People are canceling more sessions. Workouts become more of a you're kind of kicking your feet through them, or kicking rocks through your workout and kind of dragging your feet through them. So it becomes a very tends to be the general feeling.
Right.
Now, I've lived in the Northwest as well, where it's similar. The Northwest, the sun only shines for like a month. Used to it, and then every now and then, but it's a beautiful place. But you don't get that much sun up there. Now, I've never been one to be affected by the weather, I feel like, but now that I'm here and I'm older, I can actually tell a difference.
Right. Well, I don't think most people realize that they're affected by the weather, but I mean, if you live in an urban area, so let's say New York City, and that first day in March or whatever, where it's 60 degrees or above, I mean, people are just out in parks with minimal clothing, just soaking it up. Like they're craving it, and maybe they don't think like, oh, my mood's better, but it's like we instinctually crave to be in the sun, and so unfortunately it's just not a common thing anymore. And I think we've been preached to so much, and as a person who has lighter skin and as a female, it's like, don't get too much sun, you're gonna get wrinkles, wear all the sunscreen, don't get too much sun. And I've had some bad burns in my day. Like second day out camping, you have to wear a white t-shirt under your life jacket sort of thing. So I understand, but small doses, building up a tolerance to get the benefits from the sun, I think is missing.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Also, like the bioavailability too, like we talk bioavailability, we're talking about what can your body absorb easier. And with things like vitamin D, the fortified stuff in food, probably you're taking it in, but your body probably isn't really absorbing all of that. Right. Same thing with the supplement. That's why sometimes you got to play around with which vitamin D you're taking, like the brand's gonna matter and that sort of thing, because some brands are going to be more bioavailable to than others. That might have to do with individual chemistry as well, like
The capsule that it's in.
the capsule that is in, and not only that, your body, like the way, your gut and all this stuff, how you eat, and how, whether your body can absorb certain brands better than others. That's something to play around with as well.
Right.
That's why it becomes important to test for it, because you might be popping all the D in the world. But your levels are not going up,
right.
And same thing, now if you're getting it from the sun, then that's probably gonna more, I don't want to say guaranteed, but the chances of you actually absorbing and making a difference in your vitamin D levels are going to be higher. Yeah. So I think other benefits of being outside because we've.
Oh, I do have one. A few years ago, I went to a conference and it was talking about eye disorders with kids, and a pediatrician mentioned that they're starting to notice that kids aren't spending as much time outside. They're playing video games. They're, I don't know what else kids do inside. But they're spending a lot more time indoors, so much so, and on screens, either their iPad, their phone, they're sitting close to the TV, that they're starting to see a decrease in peripheral vision in kids. I don't have any hard stats on this. This was just something that, like I said, was in a conference and she, verbalized. But to me, that's always terrifying because the body is amazing, right? And it'll adjust. If you don't use it, you lose it. And so if kids aren't spending as much time outside, using their peripheral vision, why do we need it? And so I think that's another benefit of being outside is even just.
Yes. Yeah. Looking out in the distance and things like that. Yeah. That's very, small detail there, devils in the details with that stuff. There's also like actually being exposed to dirt and things like that.
Yeah.
Like you actually absorb stuff through your skin as well. This is a major organ, so like rub some dirt in it type of thing, like when you were a kid, or is that only 90s kids that live that? I don't know, probably just 90s kids. I'm showing my age now.
Well, I think you mentioned something. A lot of people forget that the skin is an organ and we absorb things through it. So when you're outside and being exposed to nature, so say you go on a hike, you're absorbing all that stuff through inhaling. If you eat anything, drink anything there, obviously please don't drink water on a hike from like areas that are pooled. And
you're breathing in with the plants and your dust and all this stuff from the outside. There's nutrients in that stuff. It's not just, oh shit, I got dirt. There's nutrients that come along that become a part of your bodily process as well. Things like magnesium and zinc and things like that you can find in the iron, shit that you can find in the dirt that your body actually absorbs as well. So yet another benefit to actually getting outdoors. I get it. If you're in a urban setting, like a place like New York City, probably be really hard to set outdoors or to find an outdoor spot other than Central Park,
right?
Or taking a trip up north to like Catskills or something like that. For us here, we're in South Florida. Obviously the default setting is the beach. But which is good.
So for me, I work on the west side of town, so pretty much the furthest away within the town. Not the furthest away from the beach. So on my lunch break, it's not like I can just pop to the beach and go for a walk. So I make it a point during my lunch breaks, and I was even doing this when I lived in New York, is get outside and take a walk around the building, however much time you have. It can be 1 lap, 2 laps, whatever. And I understand that walking on concrete around a building isn't as good as walking in a forest, but at least you are getting something, you're getting some sunshine. And I just make it common practice. And giving your eyes a break from being in a screen, being under artificial light, using that peripheral vision. So I make it a common practice, and I know you try to.
So the gym where I work at, there's a outdoor turf area that I definitely make it a point in between sessions or whatever, after lunch or before I work out or whatever, to get out there and spend some time in the sun.
Well, even when you weren't working there and you didn't have a designated outdoor space, you still made it a point to walk around
Yes,
the building.
I would do cardio outside. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would drag a sled outside. So it once we got down here, then it became a very deliberate part of our health routine, because, you're gonna live in South Florida and not take advantage of the sun being out. That's fucked up.
But I think it's also important to say, like, it doesn't have to be a workout that you do
Yeah.
outside.
Doesn't
Like, yes, we want you to work out, but if it's a matter of just getting outside for 5 minutes at work and taking a walk,
Mhm.
or I've even had patients who live in a nursing home who had a little group of them. I can't remember their name. I was trying to think of it earlier, like the vitamin D crew or the sunshine crew. I don't remember, but they would just, not all of them can walk long distances, so they would just go outside and sit in the sun for 5 or 10 minutes, and they found that to give them benefit. So I think that it's something that we easily overlook, because it is so easy to be at work and work through your lunch, which I know many dietitians out there will tell you not to work through your lunch, but I work through my lunch. So, but I always take some time within that to go for a walk. That is important to me.
Yeah. And I recommend, if you're starting out with exercise, and obviously the first thing that I'll tell people to get people into the habit of quote unquote working out is to start walking. If you're coming from a fully inactive position or background, if you will, you're like, hey, let's start walking so that we can start building a habit of movement. It's the easiest thing to do. It's accessible to most of us. And I always say, and a lot of people think about getting on a treadmill. I'm like, hell no. Hell no. First of all, whatever with the treadmills, but it's got to be outside. It's got to be outside. Okay. So that way you can, get some air, take a break from the screens, take a break from the fake lighting, and start walking outside. And it's going to be a little bit different than just being on a treadmill, looking at a TV at another screen. Because I know that's what you're going to do when you get on a treadmill, because I do it too. So it's fine.
And I think one thing to wrap up with, to not hyper focus on sunlight, but to go back to hiking, one of the benefits that I found from hiking, because I grew up in Kansas, so no mountains. So when I moved up to New York, I made it a point to hike, because I'd never lived in an area that had mountains. And one of the biggest things I took away from hiking was, like, you're stripped of distractions. Like, you can't have your phone on because most places it won't work. And plus you need to be aware of where you are, so you don't want to be on your phone. The emotions that you go through when hiking is amazing. You can be like pumped to start, and then you're like, fuck, this is hard. And then you'd be like, I don't want to fucking do this. And then, oh fuck, what if I'm lost? Am I ever gonna finish this? I made it to the top, this is amazing. I've completed something. So I think it's these slew of emotions that we don't go through on a daily basis, because we're just in this routine, and it's, we're almost perfunctory, like just going through emotions, just doing it. So I think challenging yourself in the outdoors, there's something to be said with that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Now I'm thinking back to like military days and being paid to be outside, and how much I was like, oh, this sucks. And now I'm like,
he's
no.
mad at you
Because
that you didn't take advantage
Yeah,
of
because I
that.
didn't take advantage of that. And now I'm thinking back to it. I was like, oh man, I was out there like strolling around nature. If you're on a land navigation course or something like that, and I'm getting paid to stroll around in nature.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't a bad gig.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it. But yeah, definitely get outside. If you're, like I said, urban settings, it might just be a park for you, or you might have to get more deliberate and see if you can plan a trip outside of the city and get to somewhere, a little bit more nature walky friendly, if you will.
Even if it's cold, you can put on more clothes and get outside.
It's true, and little caveat on that, even if it's not sunny, the sun's still out, you can still reap the benefits of vitamin D. It just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah.
That's actually something that I read a couple of days ago. I was like, oh, so it still counts if it's not sunny.
And I will say, if you do live in an area where there's not a lot of sun during the winter months, I do think it is worth talking to your healthcare provider about possibly checking your levels. You may have to pay for it because insurances don't like to cover vitamin D, which sucks. But maybe going on a supplementation research has shown that this is the time to start now, before the days, probably back in September,
Yeah, you
would be
gotta
the time
prep
to
it
start.
too. Yep, it's not something that you just.
So
roll
I
out.
would talk to somebody who is your healthcare provider about supplementing vitamin D as we go into the winter months. If you live in a place where you cannot readily get sun, because like he said, yes, it's cold, you can still get sun, but I don't know what he's thinking because I'm all completely bundled up that no skin is exposed.
Yeah, so I mean it's hard. But like at that point, all you get is your eyes.
Yeah.
At that point, but yeah, definitely what you said because it takes a while to load up in the system.
Yeah,
Like
so-
it's like it takes what do we call this? Like with creatine, a loading phase. Yeah, there you go. Is skipping my just having a brain fart.
Right. Well, hopefully this was helpful. Again, please don't take any of this as medical advice. We encourage you to talk to somebody who you have as a trusted healthcare professional. And if you have any questions, please drop it in the comments, send us a message. We are more than happy to point you in the right direction.
Yep, we are a resource and we're just pointing at things that you should probably consider. And we leave it up to you to talk to people that, you trust and that have your best interest in mind as well, and just maybe bring it up in conversation.
I like to also think we're a little bit of entertainment too.
Yeah,
a little bit.
We are a little bit of entertainment as well. Well, we are at Achieve the Lifestyle on Instagram.
Yep.
Give us a follow, and until next one.
Yeah, have a great day. So that was 31 minutes.